Gentlemen, I've brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem.
It may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood show.
The Vinny Eastwood show.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need.
The Vinny Eastwood show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero Radio.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites. My fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood show. We're the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists. It's Vinny's jokes.
You see, this beastly, ghastly show has been exposing our scumbaggery, which we call necessary.
Yeah, and as the World Economic Führer, I believe we should give him a little gift with a little card that says Merry Christmas from Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, we could send something through his windows. Yeah, I've been speaking with Jacinda Ardern that we need to eliminate the threat of Vinny Eastwood.
Why do you say Vinny Eastwood when it's clearly Vinny Eastwood?
Absolutely, he's a major impediment to our planet. It's just how are we going to get rid of him?
We could poison his water supply.
We've done that already.
Okay, I'm running out of ideas here. I'm sorry, I've got a lot going on. Klaus Schwab Jr. telling people that I'm some evil overlord.
Oh, that's just not true. You see, we're lifetime actors.
Yes, we play the role, don't we?
But I am still glad, I mean, even if I am not really the overlord, that I have penetrated all the cabinets of the world, you know, penetration is big for me.
Oh, it's big for me too. I wouldn't be me if it weren't for the copious quantities of penetration.
Yes, well, thank God my mother's out of the way. Otherwise, I never would have been king. Just keep to go on and on. You know, the stress of dealing with this Vinny Eastwood problem is probably what killed her. I mean, she was a very young 96, you see.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Vinny Eastwood show. Hope you enjoyed that new extended intro. I did that for the ladies. Now, we have a very special guest here today who, like myself, is, whenever you ask him how he is, he's generally borderlining on fabulous, always very positive and quite wonderful and marvellous. And he looks it too. Very handsome man by the name of Tadgh Stopford. It's spelt weird, but you'll get over that because in the video version we have spelled it correctly in the thing, so you'll be able to familiarise, repeat it, and so on and so on. Tadgh, welcome to the show, mate.
Cheers, Vinny. Good to see you, mate. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
For those who are unaware of the majestic beauty of Tadgh Stopford and TigerDrops.com, would you please be able to give them a brief rundown, and then we'll get into the prime discussion of today, which is what you've been focusing on for the last year or so, as I understand it.
Since 2016, actually.
Oh, wow.
Okay, well, Tiger Drops is not the main thing, although Tiger Drops is what keeps me afloat. So Tiger Drops are my cannabis products I sell to the public. They are You can see Jesus healing the blind under the cannabis tree, probably with the holy oil of Moses. They're holy hemp oils made with rare hemp extracts like CBG, CBDV, stuff like that. But it's the hempfoundation.org.nz that's my main jam, where I'm trying to unfuck CBD and get food grade cannabinoids for our health and well-being.
So could you get into that in terms of health, right? People think cannabis is a drug, and by that measure of the imagination, we can ignore all the fact that it heals and treats and so on and so forth. And the public perception, I was listening to David Icke today, and he said that if you really had to look at the agenda of the management of mankind and who's in control or whatever, it doesn't matter what expression that it has. It doesn't matter what politician comes out. It doesn't matter what legislation gets passed. The key here is the management of perception. People perceiving cannabis to be a bad thing in all the various facets. So let's get into it. You've been working through this from 2016 and the Hemp Foundation itself, and we have that on screen now for the listeners here. Hemp equals C sativa equals the tree of life. This is the correct website we're looking at, yeah?
Yeah. Sativa means cultivated, and it's a word only given to beneficial crops.
Okay. So, without, as they say in Palestine, further ado, let's run through and see what we're talking about here, Barry.
All right. So you probably can't see it, but here's 7 cannabinoids from hemp cannabis and their proven therapeutic properties from 2009. A lot of them are anti-cancer, but cancer is the key driver of pharmaceutical revenues. So we can't have people eating foods that can potentially take your lung tumor, for example, from 43 mil to less than 8 in 18 months. All right, imagine that. Imagine if you didn't have to have that really expensive chemo with its non-selective poisoning of your entire body that sets you up to be a consumer customer of pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life, however long that might be, depending on how badly poisoned you've been by the chemo, which pretty much killed my stepdad a couple of years ago. So basically the long and the short of it is that since before recorded history, cannabis has been a food medicine. It's a food medicine that can get you high. It's a food medicine that doesn't have to get you high. And it's a food medicine that can treat a ridiculous range of conditions because cannabis itself is full of our body's own medicine molecules. So, I mean, here we are on the internet, right? The internet, all these devices connected all around the world. All our cells are connected by a similar system called our cannabinoid system. And cannabinoids are the signals that exchange information at the cellular level, and their job is to keep things level, to keep things in balance. And that's why you hear all the woo talk about pain, epilepsy, anxiety, cancer, whatever, because they're all dysregulations that supporting the signal helps to balance out. Makes sense? Did that make sense? Or was that too complicated?
Well, the way I explain it to people is in the form of a transmutable molecule, a molecule that has an arrangement cluster of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, the 3 real healing blocks in terms of compounds. And your body has these things from birth called cannabinoid receptors. They're on every cell in your body from birth, I think. And that's how you get the cannabinoids ingested from your mother's milk, because she's got an endocannabinoid system, cannabinoids from within. And so what this does is the cannabinoid molecule in its current arrangement will float through the system. And then, like a sea anemone, the cell will latch out and hold on to it. and then it'll send the cannabinoid molecule a signal saying, bro, I need magnesium, or I need vitamin C, or I need something that can do that. And the cannabinoid molecule then from this cluster arrangement turns into that cluster arrangement, and then inserts itself into the cell and gives it what it seems to need. And this is why cannabis appears to work for everything, because it's part of your building blocks of life, the endocannabinoid system that runs it all. And I think it was Bob Melamede, Dr. Bob Melamede, he talked about the blips and flips, the backward-looking people and the forward-looking people. And the backward-looking people are generally cannabinoid deficient. This makes them incapable of change, incapable of learning, or at least not quite as capable as those who are not cannabinoid deficient. So we're talking about two castes of society in terms of healing and management of the body's processes. One which was put here, perhaps deliberately, so that we could have a treatment for pretty much anything with no necessarily massive toxic side effects. And of course, those that have been created artificially that do have said toxic side effects. And on your point about chemotherapy, I believe in New Zealand it costs approximately $50,000 per round of chemotherapy, and that goes directly into the pockets of the pharmaceutical industry, and they claim to have cured people of cancer. Now, in the classification of the cure, it means that you survive 5 years of the treatment, even if you die 5 years and 1 day afterwards. So I believe Jonathan Eisen from the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine said that chemotherapy kills about 96% of people who take it.
Well, the treatment is non-selective, yeah. So yeah, I think you had some good elements there. I think you made it possibly a little bit more confusing as well. But so information, neurons send signals to other neurons, leads to signaling cascade. Your cannabinoids are the return signal that modulate the information flow to maintain balance. Yeah, so they're the guide rails. They're the balancers. They're the return signal. They're the feedback. Yeah, but yes, and cannabis contains 3 times the cannabinoids we do. So there's a whole lot of signaling potential there. And that is why it seems the Ministry of Health appears to have done a fraud to deny us access to foods that contain cannabinoids or supplements or herbal remedies. My concern is that New Zealand is at the pointy end of the long con of making the plant a pharmaceutical, which is all part of the ongoing privatization of natural health products. We can see it with natural health products in New Zealand with the Therapeutic Products Act. We can see it with the privatization of magic mushrooms, as medicines, and the privatization of cannabis as a pharmaceutical. And people don't realize hemp is cannabis, and people don't realize that in New Zealand, hemp is now a pharmaceutical.
How did it get like that specifically? Because it was a great disappointment for me when we had a referendum on cannabis that people had been kind of trying to push for about maybe 90 years, like pretty much ever since it was made illegal in this country. And at the same time, they just tacked on this end-of-life bill where people would be able to commit government-mandated suicide. Oh, life's too hard? Yep, people will vote for that if they want to kill themselves. Oh, you've got something that can help with the fact that life is so hard? Let's not vote for that.
The irony. And the chief scientist's report, which came out before the referendum, the chief scientist's report looked at the harms, right, of legalizing, but it didn't look at the benefits. And if it had looked at the benefits, it would have found less young male suicide, less suffering, less opioids dispensed, and better health outcomes. But it chose not to actually ask the question, what would the benefits of legalizing be? That's kind of an interesting omission. Now, one of the experts on that, Professor Michelle Glass, who is, she seems a great woman. I've met her, but her work is funded by the pharmaceutical industry for synthetics, for pharmaceuticals. And in her own words, the science should follow the public debate, which is a pretty strange way to put it, because the public debate is caca, because the public doesn't understand anything, and the scientists who do understand it don't want the public to understand it. And every time they opine, every time they talk about the subject, they don't talk about the important stuff that would allow the public to go, because they don't seem to want us to understand. Here's the thing. Over 40% of all pharmaceuticals target our cannabinoid receptors because they regulate everything. If anyone out there wants to check up on that, the real name for cannabinoid receptors are G protein coupled receptors. And if you Google G protein coupled receptors, drug targets, Professor Insel, INSEL, druggable genome, you'll find papers on that. So G protein coupled receptors are an intense target of pharmaceutical research and have been for decades. Because they regulate almost everything.
It's kind of like government does. The whole element here of over-regulation and like, let's say, worst case scenario, cannabis was treated with the same legal framework and protections as a cabbage. All right, now nobody has any limits on how many cabbages you can buy at any one time. People can sell a cabbage for pretty much whatever they want, so long as people will buy it. And if people want to have a hell of a lot of cabbages at their home, they can have as many as they want. They can grow as many as they want. Let's say that was how cannabis was treated. Anybody could have as much as they want. Anybody could sell it. Anybody could grow it and grow as much as they want. What would the on-flow effects from that be outside of a regulated market? Because it's kind of like the Mahamati Sufis, who are non-violent extremists, they're called. They're extremely non-violent. And the more power you give them, the less violent they become, right? And I see cannabis as sort of like a plant-based version of this Sufi type thing. It just sort of calms things down. It just sort of makes things work with peace and prosperity.
Exactly. Look, I'd really like to have a proper talk with some economists about this, because there's obviously a tension between idealism and realism. Capitalism is built on scarcity. It is built on the control of markets, right? Health is an $11 billion spend. Sure, we could save at least $1 billion a year if we used cannabis differently, but that would, erode that market. Yes, it's a money go round, right? The money goes around to poorly paid cleaners and poorly paid nurses and well-paid doctors and well-paid managers. And that's it. It's a money go round full of political theatre. Oh, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. But no one wants to reduce costs, because at the end of the day, the health spend is an economic engine that benefits a whole, well-paid, politically influential class. So there's a real tension there between actually improving public health and between just having a money machine, do the money machine thing. But no one seems interested in having that conversation. The Japanese got ahead of this in the 80s and 90s. They saw that they were going off a demographic cliff because their population was getting so old, and that was going to cause huge financial and human harm in terms of health spend and in terms of drugs used. And so they created a new economic category: foods with special health characteristics. Foods for which health claims can be made. Yeah, it's now an $8 billion market sector in Japan, and it allows consumers to make health choices. Crazy, via food. But we seem wedded to a pharmaceutical model here in New Zealand, and no one seems interested in that kind of a thing. And that's kind of the goal in the Hemp Foundation. One of the goals is to try and get that kind of thing going. But you can see, go to our hospitals, look at the slop we feed our patients. It's like when our thinking doesn't seem entirely joined up. We've got this really interesting bean county mean thinking that's also wedded to a pharmaceutical model instead of, outcomes or what's best for people.
So two elements on that were particularly interesting to me when I found them out is the absence of medical doctor training in nutrition, either absence or just very minimal amounts of it, and also the sponsorship of medical institutions that train doctors by pharmaceutical companies, right? Yeah. What are they going to train them what to do? How are they going to train them to think? That kind of thing. Are they going to train them in the holistic manner in which so many holistic practices basically got wiped out to a large degree during the late 1800s following the Rockefeller-funded Flexner report, where he rated all of the medical training institutions in the United States that didn't teach Rockefeller medicine, which was mostly made up of the toxic chemicals in their oil that they were getting out of the ground that they couldn't dispose of properly, but they found that they had effects on people. And so they used all that stuff, all that toxic crap, and they taught everybody there was a pill for every ill, and then they basically demonized any form of health practice that didn't share their ideology. And then they infiltrated all the medical institutions saying, hey, look, we're going to fund your medical institution. We're going to give you the best, latest equipment and stuff like that. You want to be the best medical institution in the country, don't you? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. All we want is to put our people on your board. And then the next year comes and they go, we're going to need one more person on your board. And before you know it, every single person on the board of medical training in the United States was basically straight out of Rockefeller medicine. All right, and they've been perpetuating fraud and scumbaggery ever since. And when it was discovered that cannabis was capable, like oil is, of creating many different products just by minor changes in how you manufacture it and how you process it, they then created the Marijuana Tax Act, which was run by a man named Harry J. Anslinger, who was also, incidentally, the man behind alcohol prohibition previously, which a lot of people thought was about public health. It wasn't. It was because Henry Ford figured out how to make ethanol out of hemp, and they didn't want that fuel on the open market competing with their internal combustion engines run on their oil derivatives. You see? It's the same group of people doing the same thing to everybody for a long time across this entire field of health and manufacturing and industry. And hemp is basically the number one product on Earth. You want to manufacture something? You want to heal something? This is it. Why is it illegal? Because it can do that. That's why.
Here's a quote from the Ministry of Health in 2008. Cannabis is potentially a panacea for overall health maintenance and protection, much like aspirin is used to prevent stroke and heart disease in healthy individuals, because the endocannabinoid system is critical to the body's overall homeostasis, equilibrium, normal function, and influences all our main organ and tissue systems. That's 2008. Cannabis Therapeutics, a novel approach to pain and other disease state management, 2008. The National Drug Policy Unit recognized that it was the cutting-edge information of the day, and they kept it for internal reference. I needed the Ombudsman's office to get a copy of it. So, it's just anti-competitive practices. Would you like me to tell you about the curious tale as to how MedSafe blocked CBD foods?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2016, the Australasian food regulator was assessing low CBD, low THC hemp foods. Now, a food can be low THC, but rich in CBD, yeah, or other non-psychotropic cannabinoid, yeah? And the food regulator was like, sweet as, CBD is safe, beneficial, and legal. It can be a food. But, it went on to say, we acknowledge that the Ministers of Health of Australia and New Zealand have asked us to set a limit of CBD in food to distinguish between a food and a therapeutic good, to avoid blurring the line between food and therapeutic, i.e. to deny the public access to foods that our evidence shows can help with pain, epilepsy, cancer, all kinds of things, right? So the Ministers of Health have asked us to deny the public a food that's safe and beneficial. But they went on to say, we can't do that. We can't legally prohibit the public access to safe, beneficial foods. And if we try and someone challenges us in court, it'll fall over. Oh, so what could they do? Well, that's when MedSafe, which is New Zealand's own regulator, against its own internal advice, falsely said CBD is a controlled drug, and therefore it can't be a food, and it can't be a supplement, and it can't be a herbal remedy, right? Against its own internal advice. That's when the Police Forensic Chemistry Laboratory, ESR, rode to the rescue like white knights, or black knights or orange knights or whatever kind of knights you like, you know, to slay the dragon of lies and falsehood with the same facts that had already been in the internal advice, yeah? And they were like, no, science and law says CBD is not a drug and it can be a food. And that's when MedSafe was like, oh, what do we do now? So they appear to have got together with Health Legal, who appear to be basically corporate lawyers, subcontracted. And based on my reading of the OIAs, they came up with a lie, a perverse interpretation of international law, which they then hid under legal privilege so that no one could see it, and then falsely said to FISANS, we have a legal opinion that no one can see that says CBD is a controlled drug and it can't be in food. And FISANS said, okay, CBD is a controlled drug. MedSafe told us CBD is a controlled drug, so can't be a food, can't be a herbal remedy, can't be a dietary supplement, all right? Can't be in food. But the thing is, their legal opinion, we finally got a description of it after years. So initially they denied us access to the legal opinion, saying there was no public interest. There's no public interest, so you, interested public, cannot look. And then after repeated requests, they moved to, no, it's just legally privileged and you're not allowed to look at it. But what they've said is they've said that based on the Single Convention on Narcotics, which is the apex treaty in the world, they say the Single Convention is explicitly prohibitionist and that nothing in it lends itself to a more lenient interpretation. But what that treaty actually says is the opposite. It's actually explicitly concerned with the health and well-being of humanity, which the food regulator's own documents make clear CBD supports. And Article 28 of the treaty explicitly frees cannabis sativa of all controls. Cannabis sativa has no controls by international law when grown as a horticultural crop, which includes food. So their legal opinion, based upon their description, is the opposite of what the treaty says. But they won't let us look at their legal opinion. And it's been with the Ombudsman's office now for 2 years, and I hope to God that we are close to getting a look at that legal opinion, because my hope is that the whole house of cards will fall down and that we will then get a chance at food grade.
Hope springs eternal, they say.
No. for a while.
It's sort of like a cannabis activist purgatory. Abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. This regulatory agencies, it's like... I spoke to a guy about a mushroom trip one time. This is a guy who cheated on his missus, like a lot, and never felt bad about it. And then he took a mushroom trip, and he suddenly felt really, really bad about it because the mushrooms told him what he'd done and how it had made her feel. And so he went back and he confessed everything to her, and eventually she forgave him, and they're getting married this year, right?
Oh,
Now, he said, I don't know why that was, and I said, I don't know either, but I have a suspicion that it's because the mushroom has a hive mind, right? Just like trees are able to communicate with each other through their root systems under the ground and things of that nature, mushrooms can do that almost on a psychic kinetic level. And so you'll find that when you're tripping on mushrooms, you'll run into other people who are on them as well. And what I thought happened with him in terms of his change of perception is that normally you are looking from your eyes outwards. When you're on that very, very strong mushroom trip, you're looking from the eyes of all at you. You know, you actually see who you really are, what you really look like, what you've really done. Without you being able to just deny it and wish it away kind of thing. That's the change of the perception that I think everybody really needs to think about very, very deeply. This isn't just a story. This is a life lesson about taking feedback from other people, other entities and things of that nature. What are they telling us about ourselves? Now, when we talk about this, the reason why I'm saying that is because in the regulatory agencies we have it's very similar to what somebody told me about child, youth and family services, was that if you go to, let's say they do something that's illegal or wrong or something like that, the people you go to for help are the police. Do the police have more power than child family services? No, they don't. So the next thing you do is go to the family courts, which are completely controlled, so you can't get there. And so the next thing you do is you go to the Solicitor General, and the Solicitor General's on the take. And so then you go to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman on the take, so on and so forth. So what I'm saying here is that when it comes to getting a just result in the New Zealand justice system, it's problematic because of the various levels of corruption in all of those various regulatory agencies. If one agency turns out to be corrupt, the one that regulates them also happens to be corrupt, and the ones who oversee them also. So, right, that's what makes it so difficult, and that's what makes it so long and so slow and so frustrating, because we're not dealing with a system that works the way that we're told that it works. We're dealing with a self-protection racket rather than a public service.
That's entirely possible, but I can, you have to work through the system until you've finished working through the system, right? Once you've finished with the system, then you can move to more extreme measures if that's required. But at the end of the day, I pretty much gave myself a mental breakdown trying to work through the system the first few years. And now I'm continuing to work through the system while attempting to educate and activate and get public support, because really, what are the options? There's no point being a one-man army of violent dissent, because that'll just get you in a small cold room without much of a view. You actually need public support, and that requires public understanding of the situation. And so you've got two ways of doing that. One way is by talking to people one at a time, which is very slow, and the other way is going through the system and seeking accountability. I'm going through both.
Look at the old idea. What was it? Dr. Bremer Labo told me about this, is that it's emotion that changes people's minds, not the information. What you've just said is very important for people to note because of the fact that these regulators have this modus operandi. And if people are incapable of really perceiving that, all they really need to do is feel that it's wrong. and that something needs to be done about it. I personally believe, even the listeners of this show, like, I've got a lot of information in my head after the many, many years doing this, talking to many, many very interesting, very well enlightened people, and I've determined that the information that I have is absolutely worthless without the emotion that is attached to it and action associated with that emotion.
Yeah, that's a challenge. You know, I think it's ripe material for dark comedy, and certainly the juice media are an inspiration to me. So, you know, a goal is to start making some videos where I just have some fun with it, because it is ridiculous that our Ministry of Health would deny us a food for life and health when everyone's constantly screaming that we can't afford it, that everyone's suffering, there's no money for this, can't do that, you know, and yet we're missing the easy fixes because the system is so determined to monetize misery, you know. It's like, oh, really? That's our system?
I was just doing this on my YouTube channel, and hooray, you're eligible for monetizing misery. And this form of advertising, like in New Zealand back in the day, we had a show called Skits. All right, where there would just be little jokes and little situations and things of that nature. And it was great, you know, kind of like a national phenomenon at the time. And it got me thinking about the point of fact that humour is very, very important. And particularly John Ansell, the former ad man, he told me that basically if your ad isn't funny, it's not going to work. And this is how you bypass the realms of human perception control, I think, because if you can get a physical reaction out of somebody, you know that they're not necessarily engaging their full brain in terms of their black and white thinking, that they have slipped past that and they've come into the emotional centers of the brain. That's where stuff starts to stick. And in trouble with convincing people is that people don't want to be convinced if you tell them and if you try to convince them. And I was listening to David Icke this morning, and one time he told me on the show that you can't convince anybody of anything, but you can tell them things that they cannot unhear. And Dr. Rima Lebo told me that it's music. Music is the harbinger of true emotion. The reason why the Vietnam War ended, she claims, is because the Vietnam era had its own music, and that was what was changing people's perceptions. And this is something that we need to really think about in terms of what I'm doing, and in terms of what other talk radio hosts and filmmakers are doing at that time that is putting this truth out. It needs to be funny, it needs to be entertaining, and there needs to be some kind of music to it to get people out of that black and white thinking and start to really feel the information and to change the perception that way. I was talking about, do we have any evidence in this day and age that people are waking up? A lot of people tell me this. Not a single person has shown me a skerrick of evidence. If anything, it seems to be going the other way. People are getting dumber and dumber and more ignorant and more ignorant. And I think it's just a failure to utilize the psychological weapons of war that our enemy, by enemy I mean basically anti-life forces, whatever is life, they are anti-life. We have had a lot of weapons being used on us, psychological weapons and music and TV and comedy, and all of these things have been used against us to realign our perceptions in the way that they want us to think, and now it's time for us to use those exact same tools for the exact opposite intent.
Yeah. Completely agree. It's harder to create than to destroy, though, right?
On that note, it became apparent to me that for a creator, a true creator, they also need to know how to destroy things, right? If you make a something and it turns out to be a piece of crap, you need to be able to destroy it and reassemble it, don't you? Right? And that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a broken piece of artwork called government.
Well, the Whakamana Cannabis Museum, which is opening at Hopetown Alpha, that is going to be hopefully should be a wonderful asset for the cause, because we will finally have a physical platform that has mana, where we can have exhibitions and have, physical outreach, and, and the mana that comes from having a physical presence is genuine. Digital is great, but given the level of censorship and difficulty of promoting, cannabis information online, a physical presence is epic, and of course, able to get bans there and stuff like that. So hopefully we will be able to generate some momentum. To loop back, hope may not be a strategy, but it does keep us going.
Tactics and strategy, they're two completely different things, I found out recently. So do we have a strategy? Because it seems that activists, for example, anybody who basically has been hurt or had somebody very close to them hurt by something that they were unable to get justice for at the time, has a possibility to become an activist. Somebody who spends their time and makes sacrifices to try and either A, get justice for that wrongdoing, or B, try and inform people about said injustice so that other people don't go through it themselves, right? The politician, on the other hand, this is the flip side of the activist coin, will have similar bad things happen to them. But their perception is thus that because bad things have happened to me, I'm not going to sacrifice my time, I'm not going to sacrifice my comfort, I'm not going to sacrifice my safety or even my life to try and prevent this kind of hurt happening to other people. Those people never helped me, so I'm just going to do what I do. And everybody else, fuck you. Right?
Yeah. I'm an activist. That's my story. My family suffered, and that's why I'm trying to make things better. And hopefully I've got hopefully I'm not making a series of complicated, energy-consuming, expensive mistakes, and hopefully what I'm doing is worthwhile. Time will tell.
How do you see this kind of going forward? Because I think this is really only two elements that are really important here. Number one, do you give up or keep going? And number two, if you are keeping on going, is it actually helping people? Have you helped anyone? Right? If you have helped anyone, and you are continuing to help people, that gives you the impetus to just keep going, no matter how depressing it gets, no matter how hard it gets. And then basically what will happen is you'll start to question what you're doing here. Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? And you think about giving up. Right about that time that you start giving up, you'll receive a phone call or an email or something of that nature that solves a big problem that was on your mind at the time, that was making you question what it was you actually want to do, usually the right thing. And then you can just continue, right? That's how the universe works. It's just like, hey, do you really want to do this, bro? Do you really want to do this? How about this curveball? And you'd be like, oh, man, I still really want to do it. Oh, you do? Oh, okay, here you go. Here you go. You're sussed. It's just crazy how it works.
That would be nice. No, I'm definitely helping people. I've definitely helped people. But there's been a lot of mahi, a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice I've made it further than I would have imagined, and I've done more and less, than I would have thought or hoped. But there's still so far to go, and it's been so long, and I'm just tired. But hey, I've Tadgh Drops is pretty cool. What I've done with Tadgh Drops is pretty amazing, and the fact that I have. Honestly, if you told me 10 years ago that I would be selling holy oil to the people, I would have been kind of, semi-violently opposed to the notion. But you follow the evidence, and it's amazing where you end up. By the way, anyone out there, Google Sicily Cannabis Cathedral, and click on the Cannabis Chronicles and take a tour through the Basilica de Santa Maria Novella of Monreale, which is a cathedral that tells the story of the tree of life, cannabis sativa, food, fiber, medicine, pleasure, and if you look in its mosaics on the ground all the way through Genesis, you'll see another lost sacrament of the ancient world, mystic mushrooms. So, in the mosaic where God is teaching Adam and Eve is the classic good girl, paying attention to God. Adam is looking exactly the opposite direction to God. He's ignoring God and looking at the mystic mushrooms. You can't make it up. In gold leaf glass mosaic, in a cathedral built by a king and blessed by 1, 2, 3 popes. Sacred knowledge.
Well, apparently back in the day, there was this massive spore cloud that impacted the Earth around about the time just before the Renaissance, and what the Renaissance did, and maybe people have different perceptions about it or whatever, but the basic crux of it is that artists were now able to paint in 3 dimensions. There's a principal difference between the Renaissance and the Dark Ages, is that they are now able to see an extra dimension of reality, and this happened right after an enormous psilocybin magic mushroom cloud hit the Earth and contaminated the soil. And at the time, people didn't wash their food like we do now, so they would eat like little bits of dirt and stuff like that had psilocybin in it. It changed the whole world in a way. And I've spoken to some people about this, and they're very, very advocative of the use of magic mushrooms to the point where,
bro, we should put it in the water supply, just a little bit,
Mushrooms in space. I haven't heard that one before.
Well, they can survive re-entry. I mean, that's how durable those spores are, and we wouldn't know if it could survive re-entry unless they actually came here from space. And it's the same thing as cannabis as well. Some people believe it was put here specifically. It's unlike other plants, where it has a very clear male and a very clear female. Like if you look at 2 oak trees and one of them's male, one of them's female, would you be able to instantly tell the difference like you would with cannabis? No. So this kind of thing is their outer influence, right? Is their outer influence, perhaps alien influence? I don't really take that stuff terribly seriously or go into it a hell of a lot on the show, but other people do, and God bless them. I like to keep my feet on the ground to a large degree, and think about what we as a species can do rather than what other species have done for us, potentially speaking. But there has been discovered by, allegedly, NASA, that there's a planet out there that is completely covered, hemisphere to hemisphere, in hemp. Right? Dope world. And they're like, oh my God, bro. You guys want to take a little space trip holiday? Like we'll put the trip in Star Trek, and this kind of gives me the idea that if there's wisdom in the universe, and be it from God or some alien species or something like that, and they wanted to have a slave colony here on the Earth, wouldn't they want something that could house and clothe and equip their slaves so that they could keep doing their work?
I mean, I don't.
Where is this show going, Vinny?
I'm not that guy, Vinny.
No.
Thank you for your efforts.
But the flip side, and the flip side of that, what if that's all pointless conversation? It doesn't really matter, and you just get down to the nitty gritty of it. Mankind needs hemp. All right, if it wasn't for hemp, we wouldn't have made it across the seas using canvas sails, which is the Dutch word for cannabis. If it wasn't for hemp, we wouldn't have started...
Do you know why Napoleon invaded Russia?
Because he wanted some hemp.
No, one of the main reasons was because he wanted Russia, because Napoleon was blockaded into Europe by the Royal Navy. And the Royal Navy required 30 tons of hemp for every single one of its ships every 3 years. And the British hemp came from Russia, which was shipped through the Baltic Sea down. And the Russians, so Napoleon's continental system was a system whereby trade within the continent was within the continent and did not go to, the British, for example. But the Russians kept selling their hemp to the British, which is how the British Navy kept Napoleon's navy blockaded into the continent. Yeah. And so one of the main reasons, which is little known in the conventional wisdom, is that he actually marched on Moscow to force the Russians to stop feeding the beast of British maritime power.
Power that they could not have
without
hemp for sales.
Yeah, without hemp for rope and sails, exactly. Yeah. Strategic resource in many ways, but hey.
That reminds me of World War II as well. The Japanese, it's actually an act of war to have a trade embargo against another nation for essential resources like oil, hemp, stuff like that. And Japan at the time.
Semiconductors.
And Japan at the time had a lot of hemp coming from the Philippines, and so they blockaded and prevented them from getting that, and prevented them from getting oil, and so of course Japan retaliated with Pearl Harbor, which was then used to justify the war and stuff like that. So hemp is
oil and metal. Oil and metals were the main things embargoed from Japan. Yeah.
And sorry, I got confused actually. The reason why Japan actually invaded the Philippines was to get the hemp that was being grown there. So this means it's a strategic resource, right? What does that mean? It means that it's basically so important that if you don't got it, you can't support your economy and you can't fight wars, which means somebody could just take you over. Right, that's how important this plant actually has been to mankind's history. I was told by my friend Dante that back in the day, under the American farming system, I think it was pre-1812, the War of 1812, that they were required by law to grow hemp on their furlough fields. Now, a furlough field is basically a field that you leave empty. Okay, you leave it empty so that it can recover and that kind of thing, and that was actually kind of illegal at the time. You had to grow hemp on those unused fields, or else, right? Specifically because of the importance of it, with all of the things in society that really run from it, and that's why when they tried to make it illegal, they didn't call it cannabis or hemp because everybody knew what that was. They called it marijuana, which in Spanish means Mary Jane, right? And so make it this Mexican killer weed, It'll make those Mexicans murder your children. It'll make your women have sex with black men. It'll addict you to heroin. All of these claims were actually made, and they sound insane today because almost everybody's had a joint now, and it was great propaganda though at the time, wasn't it? Because again, they convinced people to abandon their reason and start using their emotion to make their decisions. And we can do the exact same thing, except instead of making their perception so narrow as to believe lies and to cause damage unwittingly by using their emotions, we actually get people to open up those emotions and make them have good decisions associated with them. Be great. Where are we going? What are we doing? Are we being effective? There's something Sue Gray, Sue Clark, said on talk radio back in the day when she used to call in all the time. Be effective. And so we've got to learn how to be effective, and that's basically the long and the short of it, isn't it, Tadgh?
Trying to be effective, bud. Trying to be effective. But it's hard. It's a complicated story, But at the end of the day, food for life, food for health, prohibited food, available as a pharmaceutical. This is the needle we need to thread to get people to understand that we should be able to grow hemp.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got difficulties with the growing and manufacturing process as well. Do you remember that hemp summit in Wellington a number of years ago? Wow. What a great thing that was. I got talking to Chris Woodney.
That was before the ministry made hemp a pharmaceutical. So in 2018, when the government told us they were legalizing medical cannabis, what they actually did, the meat behind the headline, was they broke the hemp regulations, which allowed farmers to make CBD oils, and they made it so that only licensed pharmaceutical companies could extract from hemp. Yeah, so legalizing medical cannabis actually meant create a pharmaceutical cartel for hemp products.
I am shocked. Now,
shocked and stunned.
Didn't see that coming.
No, who did?
No, it's almost like Seneca's created cynicism so that people wouldn't be swept up with lies anymore through people with authority.
Yeah, it's like, how do we invert that though? How do we invert that? How do we reverse? Yeah, so. Yeah, these are the challenges. Answers on the back of a postcard, please.
Well, that's something Arge Nost talked to me about. He talked about the concept of the mastermind. If you and I have a conversation, we've created a mastermind of two, right? What you know and what I know combined together can create something that neither of us could create on our own. What if we added a third person or a fourth or a fifth? What if we added 1,000 people, the people on your database, and we put our minds together to try and solve this problem? The problem is the public perception of cannabis being a bad thing, and to change that perception into it's really a good thing. It always has been, and you've just been lied to this whole time, and because you were such an idiot, you believe those lies and you never questioned them. All right, maybe don't tell people that they're an idiot, of course, but I'm not sure it'll be terribly effective. But yes, having a little hemp foundation conference, not official. No big fanfare or anything like that. It's just everybody sit around in a circle and start sharing their ideas and just start putting them down on the board. This is what we want to do. Anybody got any ideas? Let's create a hemp mastermind and get this thing understood. And made
look, mate, we just need to call bullshit. That's all we need to do. We just need to call bullshit, and that's actually about 12 monkeys. That's actually about just having enough people on board to call bullshit. We need people to understand that we've been lied to, that hemp has been made a pharmaceutical, that we have been denied hemp cannabinoids for life and health so that they could create a cartel. That's the long and the short of it. That's why I encourage people to join us at the hempfoundation.org.nz. We have over 1,000 members, but we need 10 or 20 times that. I'm doing the work, I'm paying the bills, but if people can lend their name, we become a movement. Yeah, if we can claim to represent this many people, that's it, right? I'm now 50 years old. I've joined Grey Power. Grey Power is one of the most politically influential groups in the country, apparently. All they seem to be concerned with overall is getting cheaper power bills and getting discounts and coupons and this and that. Pretty small-minded thinking. But if I can join, if I can get involved with the Grey Power and get them realizing that there are foods for life and health that could be a possibility instead of a several $100 prescription, then that's a way of engaging their self-interest to possibly, call for change. Because we're being led by the nose. And as I said before about the scientists, they're happy for the public debate, to lead the science, but that's not the way it works because the public don't know jack, and the science is hiding the knowledge.
I just love it. Okay, it's like when you're talking with a narcissist who can't take responsibility for what they say or will never be held accountable, will hold themselves to account for the things that they've done to you, and will gaslight you and tell that your perception is wrong and so on and so forth. It's like that, but it's not an individual we're dealing with. It's a whole population. All right, it's just like whoa! It's at epidemic levels at the moment. This mode of thinking. So, Tadgh, I get told a lot of the time, keep up the good work, and
at first, many years ago, it sounded like an empty platitude, right? Oh, Vinny, keep up the good work, right? But I had a realization about it a couple of years back. Good work, the work of good, doing good, and keep it up, don't stop. Those thoughts started occurring to me, because when you're doing good, often you'll get discouraged, and that's why you need to keep it up, you know? And if you're doing good work, which you are, Tadgh,
Thank you.
I'd encourage you to keep it up, bro. And I've been telling the listeners, ever since I had this realization, ironically on mushrooms, that, man, you've been through a lot. A lot has been done to you through circumstance by other people. And all of those things wanted to do the one thing to you that you didn't want to let happen. They wanted you to become cowardly. They wanted you to give up. It wanted you to lose your sense of humour. And it wanted you to sell your soul. And you didn't. Good on you, mate. Give yourself a bit more credit sometimes, you know?
Cheers, bro. Muddling on. Muddling on. But yeah, it's. I'm definitely outside the tent, and the whole subject of foods for life and health is outside the tent. So the challenge is how to get it inside the tent, or to get enough people around the tent with flaming torches that the people in the tent agree to change the discussion somewhat.
Of course. And but of course, since Wellington, tents have brought on a whole different meaning in terms of bringing torches to them. Now, in terms of torching them. Thank you very much, New Zealand Police, for doing that, by the way. The footage wound up spectacular. And it also gave me justification. Right, so that when I got arrested for protesting all the measures that were being done, and when me and Billy proved that the New Zealand government would not listen to you and would use any force that they could that was necessary to get you to F off, they would do it. And they would never talk to you about it, they would never negotiate with you, and they would never care about the damage that they have done to you. We proved that, and nobody else learned that lesson until it was already too late. Let's learn the lessons, ladies and gentlemen, from the people who make the sacrifices and don't make the same mistakes. Let's try a little something different next time. Thank you very much, Tadgh. TadghDrops.com. If you guys want to get some Tadgh Drops, TadghDrops.com is the puppy right there for some hemp CBG. All right, and the G stands for just straight gangster. And we
Ganja.
Does it stand for ganja or does it stand for gangster? I don't know. They're both pretty good. And also the hempfoundation.org.nz. That's the hempfoundation.org.nz. What we really want to do there is for you guys to click on the Join tab. Okay, on that Join tab, you will see that raw cannabis contains 0% THC, and you can put your name, your email, your date of birth, your address, your phone, and also, as a question here, would you like to donate your time, skills, dollars, or something else to the cause there? There's a like button, there's a share button, there's a posting on Twitter button, ladies and gentlemen. So please, I would like you to go and do that. Go to the hempfoundation.org.nz/join. Put in your details there and become one of Tadgh's crew that are actually going out and trying to change this so that people can survive.
Each one teach one. Each one teach one. Learn and share. Food is medicine. Hemp cannabis is the queen of herbs. It's freed of all controls as a horticultural crop. It certainly can and should be a medicine, but it should not be ghettoized as a pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her think. Thank you, Tadgh, for...
Ow! Ow! I'm not sure about that one.
That's why we call it not even out here, right?
You know, I bought a step ladder the other day, and I never knew my real ladder. But anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for
Try the prawns.
deeply pornographic material. Okay, well, Tadgh, that's the show for today.
Appreciate you, bro. Have a wonderful day.
All right, cheers, brother. We'll catch you soon.
Yeah.
All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, before I go, I just want to acknowledge those of you in the chat rooms that we've got here, those of you who are following on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube while we're simultaneously going out. Now, oh my goodness, Penny L.A. Shepherd has been on the thing. And Taori Mason as well. Hey guys, lovely to see you there. Very much appreciate your attention here. And Luna Long Shadow, absolutely fantastic to have you in the chat room there. And Jama Funk, Debbie Lacey as always, and John Smith, and I think that's all that we've got in terms of the chatters in the Facebook there. So, guys, I would like to thank you very much for listening. And if you're currently paying attention to this show, please understand that the Vinny Eastwood Show is a listener-supported broadcast, and that means supported by you. Are you capable of giving this video a like? If you're capable, you have the ability, then you have a responsibility. Give it a bit of a like. Give it a bit of a share. Tell somebody about it. This show literally, and I'm not even speaking out my ass when I say this, it literally saves lives. And there are people who have listened to this show during the darkest, most hopeless periods in their life who were going to commit suicide and chose not to. That is the power of having real conversations. Just being straightforward with people and telling them the truth. You can help that darkness dissipate. That's why I tell jokes. That's why it's called making light. Do you understand? There are people out there who make darkness. I make light. And I shine it out so that anybody can warm their hands by that fire and know that they're wrong. You're right. You have been all along, and no matter what they tell you, no matter what they've done, no matter what they think, it doesn't change the fact that you did your research, that you backed up what you think, that you backed up those thoughts with action. You didn't sell out, did you? You stayed true, and staying true is hard. Doing good is hard. Selling out is easy. Doing wrong is easy. And you didn't take the easy road out because you're not weak like them. And you should be very, very cognizant of that whenever these people say mean and hurtful things. As Marcus Aurelius said, look at these people that say those things. Look at what they've done with their life. Look at what they've really contributed to humanity. And you would not be so racked with anxiety that they would say such things. Thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites. My fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show. We're the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists. Is Vinny's jokes. They're just awful.
Gentlemen, I brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem.
it may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood show.
The Vinny Eastwood show.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need.
The Vinny Eastwood show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero Radio.